Hi, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us. So we have the wonderful Paul here, who I'm sure you've seen in just really extraordinary roles ranging across, you know, film, TV, theater. I mean, it's just an endless bounty. So we're here to discuss acting and narcissism, which
perfect.
I think we will agree.
They're all narcissists.
There may be some truck there, but you know, interesting. I mean, I think we can dig into it a little bit, because even though we all agree that the myth of a young boy who's staring into water and wasting away while in love with his reflection has a lot to do with where our culture is today. You know, the odd thing in American culture is, of course, we venerate actors, but we also do deride them as narcissistic, and yet in some ways acting is the least narcissistic thing one can do, right? Because you're completely losing yourself in another person, creating an entire world for that person.
And making a fool out of yourself in front of people. No,
putting yourself on the line. But is it you? It's not you, because it's actually this other person.
Wow, that's the essential question.
Right.
Is it you?
Right.
Are you the character? Do you become the character? Do you need to become the character? All those things. Are you asking if it's me?
Yeah, it wasn't rhetorical.
Are you asking if it's me, the character? That's funny. I was working once. I did a movie with Philip Hoffman. He was a great actor, a really great actor, and we had to promote it, and they put us together to do an interviews together, which is nice. It's nicer to have to do it with somebody else, because you can sort of share the burden of it. And the interviewer asked us, she said, are you your characters? Is it you? And at the same time, he said, yes, of course. And I said, no, of course not. And then we sort of laughed and looked at each other and sort of shrugged. And then he said, well, no, of course not. As I said, well, yes, of course. Like that. And it's interesting because that's the dilemma. I mean, it's hard to say. It's an unanswerable question. But I think his answer was the more accurate one. I've never murdered somebody, but whatever choices I make to play that murderer, I'm going to be making them.
Right.
So even when I'm hiding myself, the choices to hide myself are mine. So it's always going to be me. It's a nightmare, because because actors want to get away from it. I mean, I'm an actor because I don't want to be me.
Right.
And then I'm more trapped into being me than ever.
So in deciding what roles you will take, when you consider it, in addition to financial considerations and who the director might be, you know, what exactly it does for your career, when you look at it, do you feel that you must have an emotional attachment and an empathetic attachment to that role?
I suppose so. I mean, I suppose the impulse, what sparks you, is some sort of empathy. I wouldn't have necessarily thought of it that way. Sometimes I do. It's an imaginative spark, which may be the same thing in some ways, that you know, there's empathy going on. I don't know, you know, this is why that story I tell about Philip is interesting, because I do think that there was, if there was any empathy or sympathy going on, what interested me a lot of the time was empathizing and sympathizing with people that did not feel like me. Am I making it, does that make sense? I wanted to make a leap into something else. I don't look for something that I go, oh God, this expresses my pain. Because I want to get away from my pain. But as I told you before, it's inevitably going to be my pain, because it always comes back to me as an actor. It's always going to come back to me.
How much do you think, you know, as writers...
That makes sense. You get very caught in a loop as an actor, thinking about this.
So as writers, you know, fiction writers tend to model their characters on people that they know, right? And jump off from that. How much, in terms of when you are thinking to build your character, how much do you call on the characteristics of other people you know, and how much of your own?
I think there's probably tons of unconscious calling on things going on. I mean, I think I'm always pulling off of bits and pieces of people I've known forever, or all kinds of things like that. There's been times when I very consciously thought about certain things, and you know, so as an actor, you're kind of building up a log of bizarre, eccentric behavior, you know, that you sort of clock somebody on the subway and go, I really have to do that with my foot someday in a movie. Or I really have to eat like that guy's eating over there, because that's nuts the way that guy's eating. You know, and I actually do remember doing one part where I had seen a guy when I was about 12 years old in a restaurant with my parents, and he was publicly very drunk. And this is when you could smoke still in restaurants. And as a 12-year-old, I was fascinated watching this man try to get the cigarette up to his mouth, as drunk as he was. And then years later, I got to play a terrible drunk in a Eugene O'Neill play, and base the entire thing around my memory from 20 years before of this man at the table. So it's like those things, actors are constantly, I mean, all artists are, I should say, but for sure actors are. I mean, those things go, at least with me, really, I'm like, oh boy.
Right.
Oh my God, I was just transfixed by that.
Yeah. Do you enjoy living in New York for that?
Oh yeah.
It's pretty good. People watching.
But you know, I was saying to somebody the other day, it's not anywhere near as entertaining as it used to be. And I said to somebody, back in the 80s and stuff, man, you'd see stuff that just made your goddamn jaw hit the floor.
Right.
Every day you were like, wow, that person's nuts.
Yeah.
And, you know, that person's dressed crazy. And I don't know whether it's just culture in general has gotten more insane, or everything's conformed to, you know, or something, but it seems less insane. I seem to see less super crazy people.
Right.
I don't know whether it's a good thing or a bad thing. I also happen to all the crazy people, you know, where they've put them, and whether that's a good thing. But it's not quite as entertaining as it used to be. What's that?
They're not in Manhattan anymore.
They're not in Manhattan.
Figured out a way to get. So, I mean, that brings us to a question of, you know, you could say culturally where we are with social media, with the idea that you can build a self off of, you know, a Google search. You don't have to be actually cool anymore. All you need to do to find something out is just go to the bathroom, Google it, come back and say, oh, I totally know about the Ramones. I knew everything about that. You know, what are we essentially, or at least the people who engage, who are, you know, more youthful, are engaging in this as a performative part of their life every single day. Are we all kind of actors now? I mean, are we essentially, therethere's a picture of a boy here with a...
Oh, yeah. Oh, that's great. I didn't even notice he had the iPhone in his hands. That's very smart.
I mean, do you see parallels when you see where we are culturally, certainly with youth and with acting?
Oh, sure. But I think acting's always been about youth in some ways. You know, I mean, there's been a lot of emphasis on that.
What do you mean, in terms of marketing of it, or?
I just think it's always, well, I shouldn't say that. I don't. I mean, I offer the caveat that I'm not an expert on anything that I'm talking about. Up here, I'm not an expert on acting. I'm not an expert on Greek myths. I don't know. I know very little, actually. So, I mean, I'm saying that, and I don't know. I mean, youth and beauty have always been a big part of acting. Always have.
Right.
I mean, you know, I can't imagine, you know, back in the Elizabethans, it was like, yeah, you went and saw the clown, but, you know, you were really jazzed to watch the beautiful young man playing the Queen or Hamlet or whatever he was doing. So, I mean, that's always been a part of it. I mean, the culture definitely, it's nuts. I mean, everybody has got their own TV show going. You know what I mean? Everybody's got their own little their Facebook page or their thing. They're broadcasting themselves all the time in some way. So, to the extent people are always acting, I mean, there's sort of constant presentation of yourself. The dramaturgy of everyday life is constantly going on. Now it's just bananas.
Right.
I mean, now you can kind of fake yourself a little bit more.
Right.
It freaks me out to think, you know, there's a kind of virtual self. There's a virtual version of me that exists entirely on the internet. It's frustrating because I just wanted the virtual self that I projected to be the parts I played.
Right.
Now there's an even more, there's another self that I don't even have much to do with. I could if I wanted to. But I don't really want to. I don't want to Twitter and tweet and all that shit and, you know, all that. I just don't want to, I don't
Well, why are
also,
actors...
it's taking away from what I want to do. You know?
Right. In terms of time management or taking away?
Time management, yeah. But also just, I don't want to expose myself that's
But why do actors not want to? Okay, so we have, you know,
I don't know that all actors, I think
idea.
A lot of actors do want to just be beautiful me and everybody, you know, and that's great. There's something wrong with it.
But a lot of them don't, and the more serious ones don't. I mean, you find that, is that just etiquette? Is that something that's passed down? Okay, hey, you know, don't don't show too much of yourself.
Oh.
Is that a
cultural norm that's had
well,
its
is
day?
it a culture? No. I'm saying, I mean, actors, that serious actors don't show too much of themselves, their personal lives publicly. That is, I think, still true today, even though it might be less. But yet we have this idea that they're constantly shoving themselves in our face and bothering us and blah, 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 you know.
Who's actually shoving them in our face?
Right.
I mean, how much it's them shoving them in our faces or the massive publicity machine that helps the media to shove them in our
But why does a serious actor not want to show too much of a personal life?
There was a whole thing with Matt Damon who got in trouble for this recently. Did you see that?
About saying something.
He said that you really shouldn't know much about actors. And then it unfortunately got tied into a discussion about gay actors. And he said your sexuality, I mean, not meaning how everybody took it, but he was saying that sexuality shouldn't matter.
Right, and that Rupert Everett
know
had
so
been
much.
very
Well, because
hurt by that.
it's mystique, it's mystery. I mean, you know, Daniel Day-Lewis has done it right because he's refused to be, you know, I mean, he's playing that thing beautifully, that people don't know much about him, and that, you know, he's creating these, because, you know, I suppose like other works, I mean, it's a whole discussion of that, like, eliminating the artist kind of thing. It's been going on forever, but, you know, painter gets to paint the thing and put it out there, and you don't see the dude, you don't.
Right.
And it's the same impulse that actors having, to some extent. It's peculiar. I mean, yes, you want everybody to scrutinize you and love you, but it's not you that you want them to see.
Right.
It's mystery, you know. Part of the attraction is mystery.
But yet
I like being able to fool people.
Right.
And I can't fool people as well anymore. You know what
Right.
I mean? I can't. It's a benevolent con game that you're putting
But
on.
very little
I'm
is
faking
actually
people
known
out, but
about
I can't
you.
do that as well. Yeah, because I try not to have people know much about me.
Right.
I don't want people to know.
So then why do
So
you
I
feel
come
you
and do
can't?
this. And, and that's exactly it. It's like, and that's part of what everybody's lured into that now. Everybody's just like, really? You got a camera? You know, and it's like, everybody's like doing that. And so I trap myself. But actors can't help themselves in a lot of ways. You know, they got to get up and get in front of people and do this thing.
But why do we want to know? Why do we require that actors go on these junkets where they answer, you know, questions like, what do you have in common with Jerry Heller from Straight Outta Compton, you know, who's a manager of you know, these rappers in the 80s, and Paul did a wonderful job playing him and had a fabulous wig and didn't look like the man you see here at all. But yet, we'd like to know. We'd like to know, what do you have in common with it? Why is that always the question? What do you have in common?
The whole culture for a long time has been shifting towards this like inside baseball thing. We all want to know how everything works. And it's, I think, because we're bored or something. We got bored with the way everything was. And then we got all these mediums for data and information, and we got to fill them with something, and so we suddenly become interested in mechanics of everything.
Right.
Drives me crazy. People are always wanting me to do commentaries for movies I've done. I'm like, I don't want to talk about it. I don't want to sit and do a commentary and a DVD thing about it. It ruins the mystery of it. It ruins the opportunity. But everything is like that.
What do they want you to narrate? Just as essentially your scene is playing in the background, and then you say...
They do these DVD commentaries where the guy will just sit there and go, you know, whatever. And a lot of it's blather.
Yeah.
A lot of it's like, it's really cold in this scene. We were really cold. And, you know, it's just stupid. Nobody cares. You know, well, people do care. That's what's weird. Or you create the interest. And so it's all just this self-perpetuating thing.
Well, it's this idea of a super fan. And if you're a super fan, if you're, you know, so into Straight Outta Compton that you now are not only, I mean, I'm going to buy the 1.5 albums that NWA has, but also just want to know everything, then that void should be filled.
And you're able to know everything now.
Right.
You know, it's like you're able to just find out everything now. So everybody can be a super fan. And I don't know why people feel the need to do that. I don't know. Then you're merging with the thing better. If you know so much about it, it's, you know, it's you now. You know, you are that thing now because you know so much about it. I don't know.
Well, I'm very interested in the question of why TV. I mean, obviously, it's really appealing to have, you know, these Dickensian narratives that go on for 13 hours, et cetera. But I think it's also really effective in terms of people are watching this generally before they go to sleep. It really gets into their dream world. They really there's like a true identification in the way that you hear people talk about TV characters.
It's crazy.
It's really, I don't know. I mean, what do you think it is that's drawn people so deeply into that?
I suppose it's that immersion in that continuing. I mean, it's really got to be pretty sexy. It's
right.
Like, it really draws you in. It's a real erotic thrill. You really get pulled through a long-term thing. You know, all the ups and downs of it. It must be very thrilling for people, you know, and something along those lines. I don't know. I mean, I'm filming a TV show for the first time, and it's interesting in a lot of ways. I'm enjoying it. It's certainly thrilling as an actor. You have that experience.
Tell us a little bit about the show.
I'm doing a show called Billions, which is all about financial crime. It's about a crooked hedge fund guy on one side, and then the federal prosecutors who try to get these guys on the other side.
And what's your role? Which side are you?
Amazingly, I play the federal prosecutor. When they came to me, I was like, so I'm going to play the scumbag hedge fund guy, right? And they were like, no, we want you to play the federal prosecutor. I was like, this is going to be a weird show, really?
But is he counterintuitively a scumbag too? Because
yes,
that would be
of course he is. Of course
so.
he is. Everybody's a scumbag in this thing. Because that's also the thing everybody loves now. Is this like everybody's a scumbag.
Right, it's an anti-hero.
So yes, I'm a scumbag too. I mean, ultimately, he's worse than me, but I'm a scumbag too, But what was I talking about? Oh, so what is interesting for it is this kind of depth of involvement you get. I mean, it's cool. You really get immersed in it. Every day you're there all for 6 months now, all the time. The only other thing I ever did like this was a thing for HBO, this John Adams thing that I did. And my involvement in that was so complete. I never had any time off. From that. So it was literally just like, I am the president of the United States. I really am, because I'm never away from here. My wife at the time said I woke up in the middle of the night one night and kept shaking her, and I kept saying, who's going to be Secretary of State? So, I mean, the immersion you get, it must be the same thing for the audience, because I'm just in it all the time. I don't get any time away from it. Even with a play, you get the day off or whatever.
So how much do you research for something like John Adams? How much are you like, well, God, this is a great opportunity to become a real American history buff.
For sure,
I am going to get into this.
Yeah, for sure. Certain things I get really excited to look into. That was great, because I was like, well, now I have carte blanche to just sit around and read this stuff, whatever I want. It's great. I can finally read like Thomas Paine and stuff like that, because no other time am I going to sit down and read Thomas Paine. But so it was great. It depends, though. Sometimes I don't want to do too much. Sometimes I'm already having enough of an imaginative response that the other stuff's going to be too much. So it's a case-by-case thing. But I did a boxing movie, and I loved finding out all about how to wrap guys' hands and all the weird things they did back in the day with these old school boxers and stuff. That was fascinating.
And for Sideways, you, of course, got very into wine.
I drank a lot. I drank a lot. But that's an interesting one where I didn't actually want to get too into it. I was having such my own singular emotional response to this, an imaginative response. I didn't want to know too much about it. So, I mean, I drank wine, but I didn't, everything was there. I don't know, I had a funny thing with that.
Was it grape juice that you were drinking? I mean, on set, did you
Sometimes it was cherry juice, which was complicated because it caused one actor's teeth to turn purple. And then it caused aggressive flatulence in all of us. And so, honestly, I'm not kidding. We had to just be like, can we get something else? Yeah. And it was hard to find something that was, then we had to drink this non-alcoholic wine that was like drinking paste. It was horrible. So for certain things, we actually just had to end up, me in particular, just had to end up actually drinking real wine. So I could go through 2 bottles of wine.
Whoa.
Okay. I would be hammered in some of those scenes. I was just like, because the wine you couldn't fix, some of the rosés, they couldn't fake the color or the legs on the wine. So I had to actually go through a couple of bottles.
And how did that affect your
skills?
It was great.
Yeah,
okay, loosen you up.
No, the guy's supposed to be drunk all the time anyway. So it was like, it was interesting. It was like, oh, this is how some of those actors do this. This is how they get through the day getting this drunk.
So that, I mean, in some ways that was, would you agree that that was your, major break into the mainstream, and in some ways a role that I expect was somewhat complicated to be associated with in terms of, hey, now I'm a new celebrity and here's the role that I'm popular for, you know?
And I'm an unbearable pain in the ass. Right. Yeah. I suppose it was, yeah. I mean, yeah, I suppose it opened up other opportunities and stuff like that. I have a funny career that's always been kind of going different directions and stuff, so I suppose it helped. Yeah, yeah. I mean, that's a whole interesting narcissistic question, is what you get associated with in people's minds. Is that's fascinating, actually, the extent to which people think they know you, and the extent to which you start to just go like, am I an unbearable pain?
Right.
Is this me? Why am I always playing these guys?
Right.
Why am I, you know, and it's interesting, and you start to go, you know, if you're listening to Philip Hoffman, you know, it is you, you know, and it's true, and it's like some of it is, and so it's a vexed question.
Is that the rule when people see you on the street and go sideways? Like, what's the thing they say?
I get that. I get a lot of people sending me glasses of wine at dinner and stuff like that, and thinking it's the first time anybody's ever done it to me. It's really funny, but it's nice. It's sweet. I get that. I get a lot of things. I get. Probably one of the things I get the most is this kids movie I did years ago called, Jesus Christ, what's it called? Big Fat Liar. Yeah. And because kids movies move along generationally. And it's like, so all these kids saw it, now all these people's kids have seen it. So it's like, I get all these adults and kids and everybody's seen that movie. That's actually probably the thing people recognize me for the most. And I play a horrible human being in that. And, you know, so it's like, once again.
Right. And of course, I mean, American Splendor was after Sideways, or was it before? No, that was before. It was before, okay.
Where I play he's not a horrible human being. He's just a difficult.
He's troubled, so.
He's troubled. Yeah. He's difficult.
So do you agree, you know, somebody whose name is escaping me at some point, I probably knew, you said that, you know, celebrity is the mask that eats into the face. Would you agree with that? That that's it's a heavy burden for a lot of people.
It's a strange burden. It's a strange thing, and particularly more so now with everything that we were just talking about, all the access and all the broadcasting of stuff all the time, and people's, you know, I mean, that's interesting. I'm not sure. I mean, celebrity or... It's the mask that begins to overtake who you are. Is that the idea of that?
Yeah,
is that what that means? Yeah, I suppose in some ways it does. It's a very peculiar thing. Yeah, it should be a problem. I mean, it's a wonderful thing in so many ways. But yeah, it's odd, and you know. But acting is a peculiar mask that eats into your face too. It begins to eat into you. To begin with, that's a strange thing.
Right.
So it's doubly weird.
Why do we venerate actors? Why do you think as a culture we so idolize people who are essentially playing roles, you know, that okay, well, it's nice, you empathize or you get something out of it, but it certainly didn't used to be. It wasn't like that until
I don't know what it must have been like to be an actor before film. You know, I often wonder what it must have been like to be an actor before the advent of film. I wonder if you were even more identified with what you were up there playing, or less, or because, you know, I often think about the guys rolling into little villages in the Middle Ages, putting on these crazy plays, and like, I'm the devil, and all these illiterate people must have been like, holy shit, that guy really is the devil. You know, I mean, it must have been incredible power, actually, even more so in a way than now. I mean, I think people like to fantasize about being this thing and being with that kind of person, or, you know, that kind of thing, but there's some kind of weird acting out of something, you know, shamanic. There's, you know, if you really want to get kooky about it, there's a kind of, not scapegoaty quality, but there's a kind of like, I'll carry your craziness for you. I'll display your craziness for you. I'll be crazy for you.
Right, right.
You know, I'll go to the crazy places for you. You know, so you don't have to go there. I mean, I think in its ideal form, at some ancient level, that's what it was, and maybe still is.
Right.
You know, and then we can really beat on them extra hard because we get to see their private lives now and stuff. But,
right.
But there's some kind of weird, not masochistic thing, but there's some sense of like, I'll take it on. I'll do this.
When you did the Truman Show, which was what?
I suppose that's true of all artists.
Right.
It's not just actors.
So the Truman Show was what? Almost 20 years ago now, right?
I guess so, yeah.
And I mean, did you think, hey, this is where the culture's going? Or you thought, hey, this is a really cool film. I'm glad to be part of it.
Yeah, both. I mean, both. It was like, this is a really cool film to be a part of. And this is where the culture's... I can remember actually having a conversation with the director of that, who was an amazing director, Peter Weir, this Australian director, is an amazing director, about how the interesting movie would be the inverse of this, which is a movie about everybody's on TV except one guy. And that would be actually, now the movie that would be interesting.
Right.
Everybody's on TV now, because everybody is. And then you hear about some mythical figure who's not.
Right.
And how amazing that would be.
Right.
I mean, what does that mean to not be a person being broadcast?
Well,
to have privacy, because the whole privacy issue of all this stuff is fascinating to me. The idea that privacy is like a kind of strange, abnormal desire now. Why would you want to be? Privacy is equated with secrecy. Now, if you want to be private, you got something to hide.
Right, it's a
Something's
shameful
wrong with
thing.
you. That's weird to me. That's the most disturbing shift I find in all of this.
Yeah, I think it's interesting that actors don't, okay, you sit down and talk about your process or something, but, hey, wouldn't that be a great reality show? You could just watch an actor from start to finish and the role. Would you like to put that together? I mean,
yeah, that would be really, you mean just watch them play a role and stuff like
watch
that,
them as they prepare,
Yeah,
as they
that would
from
be
the time they first get the script
I'm
and what they
surprised somebody
do.
hasn't done that,
Right.
actually.
But do you think an actor would want to be followed through all of that?
I'm sure there's actors. Absolutely. There's definitely actors. Oh, yeah, absolutely. For sure.
How would you feel about that?
I wouldn't want to do that, no. I definitely wouldn't want to do that, as I sit here saying all this in front of a camera and an audience. But no, I wouldn't want to do that. But for sure, I think there probably are. That would be interesting. I'm trying to think if there's movies. To watch somebody play Richard III would be. Oh, that's true. You do watch him sort of put that whole thing together. I'm trying to think, there's not a lot of movies about actors. Persona's a good movie, but that could not necessarily have to be about an actor. There's a great movie called A Double Life. Has anybody ever seen that movie? It's from the 40s. What's that? Oh yeah, Goodbye Girl's good. Double Life's one of the best movies I've ever seen about an actor. And it's Ronald Colman, and it's from the late 40s. And it's about a guy who becomes deeply identified with his parts. And everybody loves to be around him when he's playing a funny part. But nobody can bear being with him when he's not. And he plays Othello in the movie, and he begins to lose his mind. It's a fantastic movie. And it's about a lot of this stuff.
So what about, I mean, when you are...
The process of it, that would be interesting. Yeah.
I think that would be interesting.
I think it'd be very interesting.
Let's put that together. We can package that right up.
But that would absolutely put the kibosh on everything I'm saying an actor needs to have.
Right.
The mystery and the mystique. I mean, that would just be it if you watch this guy do all this.
Well, but... I mean, as we say all these things, you can't go see a Broadway play that doesn't have a huge film actor or TV actor in it. So, to what degree are we just drawn now? I mean, as a marketing tool, I suppose it works very well, but also just this idea of needing to see these people in the flesh and see what they're really like and see that,
Yeah. It's the same thing. I mean, you're compelled to, there's something, it's a fetish thing. I don't know. It's some kind of, I don't know. There's something that there's something that reminds me of watching an animal be sacrificed or something. There's something, it's not bloody anymore, but at some point there was blood involved. There was violence and blood involved, at least in the emotions and stuff. And there's the same thing about seeing these people we want to eat almost. You know what I mean? It's like we want to cannibalize them or something. Right. We want to be so near to them. And that only gets more crazy as we have these opportunities. Supposedly we're all growing closer because of all this internet stuff, but I don't know if we are. So maybe we feel more desperate to connect.
Right.
Just connect. And these people are,
Right. But yet at the same time,
I think it's always been like that. I don't think, I just think it's
the
more.
opportunities are more available.
There's more opportunity, yeah. I just think it's an increased sense of something that's always been. I don't know if I'm making any sense. Am I making any sense?
So what, in terms of your own technique, what I mean, this TV show that we're not going to see you in, will you look in a mirror? Will you look in a mirror when
Sure.
you're What
do I practice faces in the
like
mirror and stuff like that?
Yeah, I mean,
sure.
how methody are you? Like what exactly is the
Again, I don't
process?
know. I mean, it's like I do what I do, and it's always a different thing each time. And I don't know, methody. It's like again, this idea of it's always me. So in a sense, I'm always in it. I mean, to kind of give it all these kind of props of technique and say you're doing this or that. I don't know. It's like you're always in it if you're sort of in it. That sounds sort of.
But as a
cryptic,
practical matter, where do you think about your lines? Are you just okay, I'm gonna drive to CVS now and practice my lines in the car?
Sure.
Or
I mean, I'm always it's always going it's always on a back burner no matter what's going on. I mean, it's always something that I'm thinking about, whether I'm aware of it or not. And sure, there'll be conscious times when I practice my lines going to CVS, or actors talk to themselves a lot and play out little scenes in the privacy of their own home a lot. You're playing characters all the time. You're imitating behavior all the time.
As you're cooking, you're like
sure,
absolutely.
You're doing all kinds.
Two people in the room.
Absolutely,
suddenly. Right.
Absolutely. You're doing stuff like that all the time. It's wacky, But sure, I mean, I never know where I'm going to start with it. But obviously, the words are the basic starting place. And so you just get those. You ingest those as much as you can, and then the other stuff will start to happen. That's the basic thing. If I do anything, it's just simply that.
How much
the
do you
words will start doing something to me.
How much do you get involved in saying, well, I like the role, but maybe I think he should do this, and I think he should do this, and...
I mean, I don't very much. For what reasons, I don't know. I mean, I suppose in some ways it's just the way I was sort of trained and the way I came up as an actor. It was not, I just don't see myself as meddling with the script. It's not my business. Somebody wrote it. My job is to make that work, however I'm going to make it work, and be directed and whatever. So I don't tend to do that. I mean, if I'm taking the part, I'm interested in trying to make what's there work. That's just kind of my temperament and the way I approach it.
What about improv?
The TV show offers you a little bit more of that, only because this continuous thing, everybody can lose sight of it a little bit. So you are invited to participate a little bit more, because they need your help to stay on track too. They'll be like, would the guy do this? Because you start to know the character maybe better than they do, but the whole thing is being.
Why do you see so many comedians today writing comedic actors, writing their own material? I mean, it seems like you almost have to do that now.
Yeah, well, that's what you were asking about improv, you were saying. Well, again, I think because of the reality thing and the way everything is becoming more focused on real people and everybody, the whole idea of acting is changing, which is disturbing. The idea is like, you just go out and be yourself and improvise. And a lot of people think that's what actors do. And even people within the business think that's what actors do. People don't really get what it is actors do. I'm not necessarily like I know, but people don't really get it. Improvising and all that stuff is one thing you can do. And I think it's coming more to the fore because of this sort of shift in consciousness towards reality and stuff. So we just want to see people and think they're just making the words up.
Right.
A lot of the time those people aren't, actually. It's scripted anyway.
Right.
It's like they've developed it out of improv, but that's not that different than a writer developing it anyway. So, but improv is this sort of, we love this sense that it's all, acting's supposed to convey the sense of immediate spontaneous reality, so that does even more so, I suppose. So I think that's why people are into that. And comedians are the ones that do that. Stand-up comedians, that's their thing. It's different from an actor. That's not what I do. I don't go out there and make up the words. I will do it if you want me to do it.
Right.
I'm not necessarily very good at it. And it's like, it's a different skill set. Comedic improvising is very difficult. I can improvise a serious thing better than I can.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh, that's
because I don't have the burden of having to be funny.
So have you written screenplays and plays and?
No. No, I wrote one play for myself to do as part of a thing a long time ago. That's the only thing I ever wrote, and I don't really have the ability. No, I can barely do what I do. I can barely do this. So it's like, I'm hanging on to this. So I don't need to start being like, yeah, I can write, I can do anything. No.
Are you the kind of person who says, well, the highest form of acting is, of course, Richard III. The highest form of acting, Hamlet. He's the highest form, right? Or just a play. The highest form of acting is
it is because that's the
classical
actor's,
play.
It's the actor's place. It's the. I mean, it's kind of cliche, but I think it's true that TV's the writer's medium. Well, that may be changing because of what you can do now with the. But you know, before it was a small screen. It wasn't this big cinematic thing, so the words really mattered and the plot mattered.
Right.
It was the short thing. And movies is the director's medium, or it's the editors or the cinematographers. And acting's where, and stage is where the actor's in control. Because you're out there and it's just you, and you can do whatever the hell you want. You know, you're in control of it. So it is. It is. I don't know if it's the highest form of acting, but it's the most satisfying form of it, is on stage. Yeah, definitely.
So do you have roles that you are like, I will not die happy unless I have played these 5 roles?
Not really. I mean, I like being surprised by the things that come along. I mean, I played Hamlet a few years ago, and I never thought that I would play Hamlet. And so I was surprised by that. I didn't have this thing of like, I must play Hamlet just because I figured I never would. So that was interesting. I mean, I would like to, I suppose there's a few I'd like to play Iago maybe, but I don't know if that'll ever happen either. And I always wanted to play Lucky in Waiting for Godot.
And you never did?
No, I've played Estragon in Waiting for Godot, the guy with the shoes, whose boots, has the whole thing with the boots.
Explain why Lucky to people who might not be as
Well, Lucky
familiar with
is
the play.
in the play, I mean, you know, it's the 2 dudes, they're waiting for Godot. He never comes. That's the show.
Right.
That's it. So, but they meet the guy, Pazzo, the guy who comes on leading his slave, basically, his servant by the neck with a rope, and Lucky is the servant. And Lucky doesn't say anything until he suddenly has this explosive monologue in the middle of the play that goes on for 3 pages, and it's just bananas. And it's wild and scary and funny and strange. And it's I saw a production of it when I was a little kid. I didn't know what the hell was going on. And I was like, this is boring and weird and strange. And then that guy started talking, and I was like, I want to be that guy someday. Because it was just a crazy speech.
How much theater did you go see yourself?
As a kid?
No, now.
Now.
Well,
not as much as I should. I should go see a lot more than I do. I very seldomly now. I used to go see a lot more. I don't see movies so much more. It's a bit of a busman's holiday for some actors. You know, it's a little bit like, oh God, really? You know, it's like, especially movies actually. Foreign movies I'm okay with because I'm like, I don't know who that Iranian person is up there saying these lines, so I can lose myself in it. Or old movies, or action movies, or genre movies, because I'm like, just a horror movie is fine. Plays is the same thing sometimes. It's just a little bit of a busman's holiday. I don't enjoy it the way I used to.
so when did you first become interested in acting? How old were you, and what was it? Was it your middle school pageant? Was it the girl that you had to kiss who was in in South Pacific or something?
I've rarely ever.
I'm
I'm one of those actors who rarely, if ever, gets to kiss somebody. Believe me, I hardly ever get those parts. It's hard to say. You know, it's another one of these questions where it's actually hard for me to parse out when I got interested in it. I mean, I know when it sort of hit me as like, this is a thing I could do. And it became this sort of idea of this is an actor and stuff. But ever since I was a very small kid, I loved monster movies as a kid. And I wanted to be a werewolf. I wanted to be the Mummy. I wanted to be I wanted to be the Mummy. And it was like I would wrap myself up in toilet paper and stuff and just be like, you know, just stumbling around the house. I just loved stuff like that. So I was always doing stuff like that. But I guess it was when I was in college that I suddenly was like doing it in front of people. I mean, I did plays, and I always really enjoyed it, the school pageants. But
What was the play or two in college that you feel were the turning point where you said, well, okay, this is what I'm actually...
I get wow, that's
against odds, I am willing to.
I did a production of Rhinoceros, a UNESCO play, who I like a lot. But I played the guy in it who turns into a rhinoceros in it, which was like just heaven. You know, it's this amazing scene in the middle of the play where this guy the hero of the play comes over to visit his buddy who's got a cold, and in the play everybody's turning into rhinoceroses, and he comes over to say to his buddy, "My God, everybody's turning into rhinoceroses." And his buddy keeps going, yeah, I gotta go to the bathroom, I'll be right back. And he keeps going out of the room, and every time he comes back in, he's more like, he's turning more down. And it was just heaven doing that. And I remember thinking that was great. And then we did a production of Glengarry Glen Ross, a David Mamet play. And I played, it was ridiculous. I was like 20, and I was playing, a 60-year-old man. But I played in the movie, it was Jack Lemmon, the Shelley Levine part, the guy who's being forced out, the older guy. And I remember that being the thing that I was like, his writing, for a lot of actors of my generation, was this kind of revelatory thing that you got to swear a lot. And be a badass and swear a lot. And stuff
so this was undergraduate at Yale.
Yes. So
and then did you come to New York City and wait tables for a couple of years and try out for...
No, I moved out to Seattle and waited tables for a couple of years.
Because that's where the theater business is, and that's where the film business is.
I didn't even know what I was doing. I'd lived in New Haven for a long time, so I was going somewhere very different. So I went out there, and I had friends out there, and some of them did theater, and I didn't know what I was really going to do. But I worked odd jobs and stuff, and I ended up sort of doing theater for no money. Just doing black box theater and stuff like that. Not even the very good theater out there, but doing theater and making a little bit of money at it. And then there was a lot of stuff going on in the late 80s in Seattle, work. And so, for an actor, and I was trying to do other things, and they weren't really panning out. And I actually started making a very odd living. It was kind of scrappy, getting weird little odd jobs, acting. So I thought, well, this is what I actually want to do. So.
In dramatic theater.
That's a very nice name for what I was doing out there. I'd like to think that's what it was. Honestly, I was doing really, really off-the-wall, experimental stuff. That was just kind of ridiculous and fun, and getting paid for it. I was not working at the Seattle Rep. I couldn't break into the Seattle Rep. But I didn't even know I wanted to be an actor necessarily. I was doing I started getting jobs because people would come see me in this place. At Boeing, you did industrial films. So I would make like several $100 doing an industrial film. Playing an airplane mechanic. I'm not kidding. Playing an airplane mechanic and being like, "Hey, man, what's going on?" And that was it. That was my line. "What's going on, man?" Like that. That was it. And I would do stuff I did a lot of that. And that was great because I suddenly was like, wow, I don't care. I'm acting and I'm making money at it. So odd jobs like that. The theater I was doing was just wacky.
And so then, even though you were sick of New Haven, you decided to go back to graduate school.
I was sick of New Haven. I just was going away.
Yeah, of course.
I was just going away.
Who doesn't want to spend their whole life?
Well, yeah, I figured I'm going to do this for a living. I really like it. I ought to know what I'm doing. I'd never taken any classes or been trained or anything. And I thought, I don't know if I'm going to be able to really do this. I might as well have a degree so I can teach it if I can't actually do it. So I went back and did it. And I'm glad I did. I thought I'm going to act on stage. So I ought to have a better voice, and I ought to have, I ought to know how to do this stuff. So, and I learned all that stuff.
At Yale?
Yes, at Yale.
And then did you move immediately to LA to search for a fortune?
I never went to Los Angeles. I moved to New York City because I thought I did not picture myself having any kind of film or television career particularly. I thought I'm going to do theater. That's what I'm going to do, so I'll go to New York. And that's what I did do. I did a lot of theater, and I've made money, playing homeless guys and stuff, and TV cop shows and stuff like that. But I was doing this great theater, and I was making money doing that.
So then why did you decide to make the transition?
I didn't really decide. It just kind of happened. I wasn't thinking I'm going to do... One of the things I like about this is I don't think much about it, as you can see when I talk about it. It's pretty random, and I like the random nature of it. I liked the unplanned nature of it. I don't know what my next job's going to be. I don't know where the hell I'm going to, what city I'm going to be working in. I don't know. I like that. So that was.
But don't you have to be a hustler, or is it just okay? The manager's a hustler, the agent's a hustler, and I'm the talent. And
they do a lot of the hustling for me. But I was hustling up theater work, and then I'd get a TV job or whatever, and then I got a film role of some substance in this Howard Stern movie, and that led to more film work. But I didn't think it was going to. I didn't know it was going to. I wasn't hustling that job up thinking, this is my end. The Howard Stern.
Right, Yeah.
You know, I mean, it was like, they said, I've made it, baby. I'm playing like the bad guy in Howard Stern's movie, which was a great part. But, you know.
But Howard Stern was convinced, you know, that you were the greatest actor he had ever laid eyes on, right?
Yes, absolutely. No, I don't know what the hell Howard Stern thought of me at first, but I enjoyed working with him a lot.
Yeah. But he certainly, he came out and sort of.
Well, he takes pride in thinking he discovered me, and maybe he did. You know. I kind of think, listen, like, it was an awesome experience, and he was great.
So why no LA ever? I mean, it's amazing that you've had the career that you've had and you haven't.
I've worked out there. I mean, I got jobs that took me out there, and I just didn't have to. I just somehow managed not to have to. I was not lucky. I would have been fine going out there if that's where the work had taken me. It just didn't. It just didn't happen to take me out there.
So we've talked a lot about your amazing roles. What about if you get a role where you're just like, you know what, I took this, shouldn't have taken it, and now I'm here, and I'm stuck, and I'm bored. You know, how do you, and as you go on in life, how do you continue to make the work vital and exciting for yourself?
Yeah, that's hard. I mean, I'm lucky I get a lot of good stuff. I mean, I haven't had that experience a whole lot. I mean, you know, you take things for money and stuff like that, but I've never taken something just for that. I mean, there's always been something interesting to me about it. I had that experience too much where I felt like, oh, geez, I'm really bored and this was a mistake. I don't actually, and I'm not being, I mean, I really don't feel like I've ever had that. You know, what gets hard is, you know, it's one of the reasons in some ways I went with film, because it's like, you know, stage or something. You're like, oh my God, I have to go out there again and, you know, play Hamlet again. And it's like, I'm scared and I'm tired but then you go out there and it's fine and it's great. And maybe the best show you had. That gets tiring. That gets boring. You're like, when am I not going to be nervous about this anymore?
But people talk about it as being so exciting to have the energy from the audience, etc.
Well, right. That's what does it when you go out on stage. You're like, oh, I'm fine, because there's all these people here. I'm fine. They're all with me, so it's fine. So, you know, oh, absolutely. Just that kind of thing. I don't know. It just, and I talk to older actors and stuff, and, you know, I was talking to this wonderful older actor who plays my father on the TV show named Jeffrey DeMunn, who's a fantastic actor. I said, when does it ever get easier? And he just was like, doesn't. It doesn't. And if you get better at it, which hopefully you do, it actually gets harder. The more you can dig into the thing, the better you get at it, the harder it gets. It doesn't get easier. It gets harder in a way. It's like, thanks, Jeff. I'll see you on set. Thanks a lot. Thanks for comforting me. Thank you from your.
Do you expect to do this forever and ever? I mean, is there a time where you're like?
Sure. Absolutely. Because I'm not qualified to do anything else. I mean, I better be able to do it forever and ever, because I'm done. I'm screwed now. I'm stuck with it. So, you know. Yeah.
All right. Thank you so much.
Okay.
And thank you all for.
All right.